son, because that's what I probably would have done. But I just really appreciate the fact that we've got a lot of people here. You guys are taking the time out to come and listen to this ginger bearded guy tell you a little about what I know about fibromyalgia and some of the things that we've learned with our clients that can help people manage some of the symptoms that are involved with fibromyalgia. So can I, just to start off, can I get a show of hands in the room? How many people have been diagnosed with fibromyalgia in the room? How many people haven't been diagnosed with fibromyalgia in the room? How many people haven't been diagnosed with fibromyalgia but are questioning whether potentially there's some symptoms there? Okay, cool. So I'm going to start with the really hard, honest truth that in my experience that most people aren't very good at managing fibromyalgia. Is that a fair statement to make?
Yep.
Yeah. So is it also a fair statement to make that sometimes you guys feel a little bit unheard, that no one really cares, that people kind of make statements like, oh, it can't be that bad, or you don't look that bad, or it's all in your head. Has anybody, I'm not stepping out of place, that is experiences that most people have.
And from GPs as well.
So I'm not going to be telling people that fibromyalgia isn't a condition, but does anybody want to hazard a guess of what the term fibromyalgia actually means?
Myalgia or fibros.
So, yeah, exactly. So most people don't actually really know what the definition of fibromyalgia is. Does anybody know what myalgia means when it comes from a medical terminology?
Pain.
Yeah, it's muscle pain, right? Does anybody know what fibro means when you translate it from Latin?
Unknown.
Unknown. So it means unknown muscle pain. So really good label, guys. So a lot of people have, and basically what your doctor is basically doing is giving you a label that says, there's something wrong with you, but I don't know what's going on. So what I'm going to try and do is speak some of the truths that I feel are involved with that. But if it's okay, I'd quite like to just introduce myself so maybe you actually think that I might be qualified enough to actually have this talk. So my name is Patrick. I am the lead chiropractor here at Complete Health. I've been running this business now for 7 years. I know, don't say it, I don't look old enough to have been running the business for 7 years. Okay. So I took over this practice when I was 27. I was either really stupid or really brave, but we're now the fastest growing practice in Eastbourne. And you can probably imagine why we're the fastest growing practice in Eastbourne, because how many of you guys have had a free workshop on fibromyalgia before? So the reality is that what we're just trying to do is we're trying to get down and actually reach people and speak on a level that is good for you guys, so that you guys can actually have access and understand that there are options that go beyond what the NHS might be offering. Because at the moment, how many people feel like they're being really well managed by the NHS? And by the way, is that just for fibromyalgia or is that for just about everything right now?
Generally.
So it's not really I think I'm not going to say it's really a surprise that it's a struggle to get appointments with GPs, it's a struggle to get attention or time or care that people probably need. And these kinds of things need a little bit more time and attention. Is that fair to say? So, like I say, I've been doing this now for about 10 years, and we've been doing these talks for about 6. We've probably had the best part of a couple of hundred fibromyalgia clients coming through the practice in the last few years, and I'll tell you why. It's because I do this, right? Like I say, I'm probably the only person that I know in Eastbourne that's willing to stand up in front of her.
Do you see many fibro idiots?
Yes. Yeah. So most people that are coming to see us, they don't have one problem, right? And you're going to understand why by the end of today. So what I want to do is, by the end of today, I want to go through what I think are the 3 main primary reasons why people see dysfunction in their body, how we basically trigger that, and what we can essentially do to try and alleviate some of those dysfunctions, and then how that has an impact on the way that our body starts to work. Okay. So like I said, does anybody know how many years a chiropractor actually has to study for? So minimum 4 years, minimum. So in Denmark, chiropractors study with medical doctors. We all do the same medical sciences, so we learn all the same pathology, physiology, biomechanics, etc., etc., etc. And then what happens is doctors go off and learn pharmacology, and chiropractors learn how to obviously treat things naturally. Pretty cool. So like I say, I studied down in Bournemouth for 5 years, and like I say, I took over this practice 7 years ago. I think it's probably quite safe to say I'm the busiest chiropractor in Eastbourne. Just quite lucky. I'm blessed in the fact that I've actually got someone in the room that might even vouch for me today. So what I really want to do is, like I say, I want to go through the function of the body, and really particularly there's a very specific part of the body that chiropractors are very focused on. Does anybody actually know, if we start talking about, so what's one of the primary symptoms of fibromyalgia that people don't like? Fatigue. Anything else? Fibro fog, muscle pain. Right? So it's typically, that's one of the number one reasons why people come and see a chiropractor is pain. Does anybody know where pain is perceived? It's in the brain. So guess where we probably as chiropractors start to focus? On your brain and your nervous system. This has been the primary premise of chiropractic pretty much since the history of when it started over 130 years ago. Our focus has always been on the way that the brain starts to work and how it controls the body and what it does. And it controls every single function of the body and not just pain. Okay? But I think really for us to understand things like fibromyalgia, and I'm gonna loosely label it a disease, right? So for us to understand disease, I think we almost have to understand what health is first. Is that a fair kind of assumption to make? Yeah, cool. So if I ask people what the definition of health is, if I asked you to, and by the way, don't all shout at me at once because there's like 20 people in the room and I won't be able to hear all the answers. But if I asked you to define what health is, what would you define the word health as? Feeling well? Good quality of life? Having energy? These are actually better answers. Pain-free. Yeah, cool. So that's actually most, for most people define health as how they look and how they feel. How they look and how they feel. Are they good definitions of health? So COVID was probably a really good example of teaching us this. After COVID, people started going back to football stadiums. How many people had heart attacks in the stadiums? How many football players had heart attacks on the pitch? How many of those guys probably felt that problem coming on before they got on the pitch or into the stadium? So those people didn't know that they were unhealthy, but is it fair to say that there was some sort of health implication that was starting to manifest that they weren't aware of? So this is the problem with health, is that if we wait until we feel something, often the problem is already starting. Does that make sense? So, one of the things that we obviously want to try and do is to prevent things, but as we're in a room full of people that are potentially already somewhere down the line, we want to help you try and find your way back. So, okay, so look, we obviously know health isn't just, and actually, does anybody know what the actual definition of health is? Anybody heard? I know there's maybe one person in the room, but she shouldn't say the answer. Do you know the definition of health still?
You were going to do this. A complete state of physical, mental and social well-being, not merely the absence of disease or infirmity.
This is what happens when you're a partner of a chiropractor.
Slash a GCSE teacher.
So yeah, the World Health Organization defined it as complete physical, mental and social well-being and not just the absence of disease. So, and this is the reality, right, is that if we look at that as a definition of health, how many people in the room are actually healthy? Complete physical, mental and social well-being. Yeah, it's a bit of a slippery slope, right? So the reality is at no point in time is probably anybody 100% in all of those areas. There's going to be slips and scales and bits and errors, because let's just look at stuff like COVID, right? How many people were out and maintaining a really good social life during COVID? Yeah, maybe one or two. Somewhere down in, what was it, the politicians at 8 Downing Street, they might have been having a good time, right? Everyone else is locked in their garden and reminiscing the summers at B. So, okay, so look, what can we actually do to actually measure health? If I ask you guys, how can we measure health as an objective measure? What can we do to measure health with people? How they feel? I mean, it is a measure of health, right? If someone's not feeling good, is that probably a relatively good indicator that that person's not functioning at an ideal level? However, like we just said, We can't use that as a sole instigator because otherwise those guys that have the heart attacks in the football stadiums wouldn't have it. Cool. Is there anything else we can do?
Tests, like blood tests.
Blood tests, always a good one. How many people got a blood test in the room? Did they find anything?
No.
Okay. All right. Okay. So it's not. I'm not saying it's not a good measure, but it will only pick up certain things, right? Is there anything else?
X-rays and scans.
X-rays and scans. So you know all about that. So yeah, that's another good.
Listening to your body's messages, just
Listening to-
understanding and
Yeah.
it
So,
comes out how you feel.
You know, acknowledging things like different symptoms, where those symptoms
You're
might
feeling
start to be.
different.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else?
And check about mobility.
To look at function. That's really where we come in, right? So function is something that we like a lot. How well does someone move? How well do people's muscles function? You know, what do people's x-rays maybe look like? What does someone's posture look like? So these are all measures of things that we can actually have a look at with patients and see how is someone functioning. Because at the end of the day, if someone's not functioning, they're probably not going to be feeling good. Is that a fair comment to make? So really, like I say, there's one thing that I really like focusing on with people's health is the way that their brain and their nervous system is involved in this function. It's probably the key thing, because at the end of the day, our brain controls every single function in the body. Does anybody know how many nerve cells we have in the body? Anyone has a guess? It's a big number.
Trillion.
I mean, not quite as many. More than that. Any higher, any lower? So less than a trillion, but more than 4 million.
Yeah.
It's about 100 billion.
Oh wow.
And when we look at how many connections it makes, you're relatively close. It's about 1,000 trillion connections within our brain and our central nervous system. It's quite a complex. It's quite a complex structure. You know, it's got a lot of information to basically carry around. And so, when we look at the function of a nervous system, actually, when we've studied it, it's pretty much split into 3 main functions. Does anybody know what those 3 main functions of the body actually are? Autonomic, so automatic function. So that's like everything that's going on with our organs. That's ironically the one that nobody ever gets. So, autonomic function is essentially all of the stuff that's going on in your body right now. So has anybody eaten something today? Yeah? Yeah, everybody's eating something today. Are you thinking about digesting it? It's making its way through there, right? How many people's hearts are beating in the room? Anybody I need to phone an ambulance. But the reality is all of these things are going on under the covers, right? Okay. So what other functions do we actually have of our brain and nervous system? What else does it control? I do a lot of it. Yeah. Movement. I do a lot up here. You're going to see me move around. I can't stay still for love nor money. But my brain is telling my muscles exactly what to do. If my brain wasn't working, my legs wouldn't be working, I wouldn't be moving around so much. It's a good thing they do. Okay, and then there's the one that you guys probably don't like, the fact that your brain controls. Sensation. And we get good and bad sensations, right? We can feel good sensation, we can feel bad sensation. But our brain controls all of those things, okay? And when we have a slip in this, we have a slip in our health. Now, I actually have a real reason why I became a chiropractor. You know, it was to do with something that was going on in this picture. Now, there was a health complaint in this picture, and it'd be interesting to see if anyone can pick it up by looking at the picture. That's all right, I'll drop it back. Yeah. I don't want to give everything away. I don't know. I didn't have a beard, no. I sneezed and my hair fell off my head onto my face. And it also changed colour in the same process.
You the one on the left?
Yeah, this side.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah, that's me.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, like I said, I sneezed, my hair fell off my head and onto my face.
Okay.
And turned ginger, yeah. But you can't see a health complaint, right? It's quite a serious health complaint in this photo. No one can see it. So if I told you that someone in this picture had stage 3 terminal cancer, oh, can't see it, right? So unfortunately, my mum was, she had a bowel tumour at this time, and I had to learn some very unfortunate lessons about how health can take side effects in people's life when we don't manage our health properly, and when we sometimes ignore symptoms and let them lie, and when mistakes happen medically, what can start to happen. So obviously my life got flipped around when I was 19 and my mum passed away, and I had to look for a route of what I really wanted to do with my life. And ironically, guess what fell in my lap? Because I didn't know I wanted to be a chiropractor. I accidentally became a chiropractor, but it came at that point. That's when I found this course, and when I started reading the material around chiropractic and how we were trying to teach people not to try and treat diseases, but actually how we can promote health and by therefore prevent diseases, that kind of sounded like a much more appealing thing than giving people pills. Damn straight. Hallelujah. Sorry, we're not that kind of preaching place. So, what I want to have a look at is how injury or impact on the body can start to change the way that our nervous system works. So, if I asked you what kinds of things people would do that would possibly cause maleffects to the body, what kinds of things might people be doing that might affect their health?
It's not eating.
Yeah.
What's the
You diet.
So nutrition. Okay. Stress. Stress. Oh my god, stress. Trauma. Yeah. Anything else?
smoking, drinking?
Lack of sleep, drinking.
Anxiety.
Huh?
Anxiety.
Anxiety. Now, interesting enough, you notice how we're not just saying it's one thing or the other, right? How many different things can we do in our lives that can affect our health? There's a lot of stuff, right? So when we look at things from a chiropractic perspective, there are typically three main categories. We talked about stress, we talked about anxiety. What we're essentially talking about is emotion or thoughts, how our mental health has an impact on our body. How many people have had emotional trauma in their life? Right. Like I say, I just shared my emotional trauma with you. Do you think things like that had a big impact on my life? Huge. Huge. We also talked about what we eat, what we drink, what we smoke, what we are surrounded by. So these are chemical traumas or toxicity. And then I don't know whether anybody actually said it. Physical trauma. Yeah. You know. So we define them as 3 T's in chiropractic: thoughts, toxicity, trauma. All right. This is when things get juicy. This is my favourite bit of this talk because I think the penny drops. When we look at fibromyalgia, there's a very typical list of symptoms that people start to have, right? How many people in the room get chronic pain? How many people in the room get chronic fatigue? How many people struggle with sleep? How many people get palpitations? How many people get shortness of breath? How many people have dropped immune function? How many people feel like their tissues don't repair or recover quickly if they have an injury? Do you notice how, like, half the room puts their hands up for these things? Now, there's a logical reason and explanation to this process, and it's right here in front of you. By the way, I went and did the same physiology, and I probably should stand to a side so that everyone can actually see this. There's a really obvious thing that happens physiologically when we go under stress. Okay, so let's just put ourselves into a hypothetical scenario. This is Andrea's favourite part of my talk. She absolutely loves it when I do this because it's also really not going to happen. But there's a couple of reasons why this isn't going to happen, because Drusilla's one doesn't have a tiger, and 2, I don't know that it would make its way here even if it got out. But let's just hypothetically say that Drusilla's had a tiger, and for some reason the Drusilla's tiger makes its way down the A27, and the first place it thinks of stopping for lunch is here. It sees 20 odd people sitting in a reception area and goes, That looks tasty. So it makes its way up the stairs and into our front door. And somehow, as intelligent as this tiger is, it works out how to open the door and it finds itself there at the back of the room. What happens to everyone's heart rate in the room? Goes through the roof, right? What happens to people's breathing? Starts to go up. Our breathing rate starts to go up. Why? Our body is preparing ourselves for one of two things: fight or flee, or freeze. Depends on whether you're a freezer. You might be a freezer, I don't know. Does anybody know what happens to your immune function in that moment in time? Shuts down, stops working. What happens to your digestive system? Shuts down. By the way, I didn't go for that symptom. How many people have like irritable bowel or indigestion? So you notice how a lot of the stuff that we're talking about basically ties in with stress and how it starts to change the way our neurological system starts to send and receive signals. What happens to muscle tone in that situation? Do you think that muscle tone is going to go up or is it going to go down? It's going to go up. Why? I'm preparing to run away. Now, interesting enough, has anybody ever seen what happens to a dog when a dog gets stressed? You stress a dog out, or there's like loud fireworks and stuff going out. It shakes.
His fur goes up on the back of his.
Fur goes up on the back of his. Let's say again, preparing for a stress response. What happens to its tail? Tucks under. What happens to its head? Down. What do you think it's doing? Protecting vital organs. Now, interesting enough, there should be one knocking around in. I don't know whether there is one knocking around the room, but we use posture photos. We actually did one with you not that long ago, right? And we do posture photos in the practice. Why? Because what do you think a stress posture looks like? Because what is our inborn neurological system doing to protect ourselves? Sliding. Mechanically, who thinks that's going to be good for their back? Yeah, you pass it around. So you'll see exactly what we see when we do this process with people. But actually, these photos also show you some of the changes that we see with people, and actually what happens when you start managing the way that their neurological system starts to work. So, like I say, we've already asked people how many people struggle with stuff like, and this can be a whole course of different things. Heart rate goes up. What kinds of symptoms might we see with that? Arrhythmias. We might start to see shortness of breath, sometimes sweating. We may also start to see high blood pressure. Breathing. We might start to see things like asthma, shortness of breath, panic attacks. When we start looking at digestive system, what things are like indigestion, we might start to see chronic inflammation in the gastrointestinal tract where things aren't passing through properly. If we start looking at immune function, what do we start to see? Well, not only do we start increasing our risks of having infections, but we also slow down our repair time. Because our immune function, not only is it involved with fighting off bacteria's infections, it's also involved with the process of our body starting to repair and heal. So if your immune function is not working properly, guess what happens to your healing times? It goes through the roof. And if it's dropped low enough, then it won't allow your body to repair and heal. Do you know what else your immune system, and this one's a really key one, this one hits home for me, do you know what else your immune system does? It gets rid of cancer cells. One of the side effects of immunosuppressants, for many people that don't know this in the room, is increased risk of cancer. It's one of the side effects. Don't tell you that one, well, you probably do, somewhere deep. So, sexual reproductive organs can start to not work as well. So again, things like for males, testosterone starts to drop down, estrogen. I don't know whether anybody in the room is going through menopause as well. Hot flushes, and energy levels, and mood tends to be something that starts to go with that as well. So when our sexual reproductive organs aren't working properly, and again, during the chronic stress response, guess what happens to your sexual reproductive organs? They go down.
That's almost hormonal balance.
Hormonal balance. So we might start to see knock-on effects, especially with hormonal balances. We might start to see knock-on effects on stuff like thyroid function and all these other things as well. Yeah. Now, interestingly enough, when the body's under chronic stress, it does tend to communicate this quite well. does a really good job with you guys, guess what it does? It produces these funny things that you guys are all sitting in front of me with, called symptoms. Symptoms are a very clever way of your body trying to communicate to you something. Symptoms are pretty much there for one reason only. It's to tell you that there's something wrong. That's what they're there for. Now, the question that I would always ask someone, is a symptom a problem or a disease, or is it a maladaptation? It's a very quirky question, because at the end of the day, is your body doing something wrong if it's under a chronic stress response? No, it's doing what it knows how to do, which is try and protect the body. So in a hypothetical scenario that the tiger did come in, does everybody in the room want that stress response to work? Yeah. Why? Because what's it good for? It's good for our body's survival. But when we're in that state for a chronic period of time, guess what starts happening to our resources within the body? It starts to fatigue and run out. Yeah, driving through the roof. Because at the end of the day, right, does everybody in the room drive? No? Okay, everyone owns a mobile phone. So we can use this analogy both ways, right? So if you drive a car in first gear, is it going to run out of petrol faster or slower? Faster. If you have every single program open on your computer or your phone, does it use your memory and your battery up faster or slower? Faster. The more processes and the harder we have to run processes within the body, guess what? The more energy we use. Which means that we have then less resources to then restore, repair and heal.
What's your worst symptom or case of fibromyalgia?
Good question. I'm going to go through that later because I've got a case study, which is probably one of the things that made me realise that we can help people a lot more than I initially anticipated when I started doing these talks.
Because I've been through that myself, and then didn't know what to do, and obviously it's been really bad serious
Yeah. Do you feel like you've had more information in here than you probably had before then?
I was really lucky. I went up to the UCL hospital and I spoke and had an hour-long session with
Oh, that's
the
right.
person.
Yeah.
How did you get that?
Go and give the cards out. Because I'm sure everybody would like to know. Yeah.
So I went up to see that, and then that's when I went through the symptoms and then contacted it so bad. But POTS as well as fibro. I got diagnosed earlier. But yeah, I had a really bad episode, but literally, if I wasn't in hospital at that time, I would be rushing the six. I had surgery, and then all of a sudden, I was okay for like 6 hours, and then just, yeah.
So one of the things that I'm always really clear with people is I'm not anti-medicine. I'm not anti-medicine, I'm not anti-medics, but I do feel like we definitely need a change within our health service. Especially for speed of service, because you were lucky, but if you weren't in that lucky position.
They thought it was straight, but I had it about 5 times in a year. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So I'm gonna hopefully potentially answer that question before the end of today. That's no worries. So yeah, I'll go through a case study of someone that I've seen in the practice. She would normally come actually in and yeah. That's an extreme case, but you'll see some similarities. Okay. So I guess then the next question that I guess that I want to really kind of hit into is what can we actually do about it? Because that's really what you guys came in for, right? You know, it's all good me telling you about the physiology and the neurology and the way that things actually start to adapt and change. But what do we do about actually fixing the problem? That's the next question, I guess. So we spoke about obviously 3 things: physical, chemical, emotional, traumas on the body. We can be toxic and deficient in any of those 3 areas. So how many people have had like a big emotional trauma at some point in their life? How many people have had a big physical trauma at some point in their life? Yeah. You know, and most of us at some point probably would have had a chemical trauma, whether we're aware of it or not. You know, I'm sure most people in the room probably drank themselves to a point where they maybe got a little bit carried away, or you know, there are those things that happen with, or we drank something as a kid that we weren't supposed to drink. Like, we do stupid stuff, right? but we're all being exposed to chemicals and things around in our environment. But we can take a little bit of control on this. Now, I'm not saying it's going to solve all your problems, right? But the reality is what we're trying to do is etch away at trying to get improvement. Is that fair? So like a 5% improvement each year. So has anybody ever heard of the compound effect? So if you put £250 a month into an 8% ISA, and they do exist by the way, if you go into an FTSE account, put £250 a month away between the ages of 21 and 65 when you retire, you will retire with £1 million in the bank. I told you that all too late, didn't I? But if you start at 31, do you know how much you retire with? So it's 10 years less. It's 10 years less. It's £500,000. £500,000. That's quite a big drop for 10 years, right? Putting the same amount in, and you only technically put, I think it's like £25,000 less in. So it makes a big difference. So the compound effect of making little changes over a significant period of time is essentially what we're looking at trying to help people achieve. Is make a little change, remeasure, see how things are improving, make a new little change, measure how things are improving, make another little change. Now sometimes this has a much bigger effect, a lot more quickly than what I'm anticipating. So what can we do physically that can potentially help us to reduce pain or dysfunction in the body? What kinds of things can we do physically for our bodies that might help us to actually improve our health? Exercise. Okay, and I know this is probably a really big one, and don't fire me down for this one, because for you that might be a bit of a difference, especially with stuff like POTS. So don't take that one straight away. Good.
But there's exercise and there's exercise.
There's exercise
I'm
and
going to
there's
go run a marathon, are you?
And that's the thing, right? So with exercise, one of those things that I do talk about with people, especially with fibromyalgia, is pacing it and not going too hard, too fast. Okay? But I mean, it can start something really simple. Walking, yoga, meditation, breath work. They're all physical exercises. Doing breath work is still working your lungs. It's still working. It's still physical work on the body. It's just not, like you said, going and running a marathon. Okay, so we can do physical stuff for our body. We can even do stuff like I say, yoga or Pilates. Again, within the tolerance of the body. There are other physical things that we can do, and that again comes into stuff like therapies, and we're going to go through that in a minute. What can we do emotionally that can help us improve on our health?
Meditation.
Meditation is a brilliant one. By the way, they've proven this time and time again. I don't care what people think about meditation. It is not all for Tibetan monks sitting on top of the mountain. It's one of those things that we actually have shown that you can. They've shown it with athletes, that athletes can improve their sports performance as much by visualizing their performance as actually doing it. They've also shown that piano players can improve their performance on a piano as much by visualizing them playing the piano than actually doing it.
And there's so many different, it's not just about sitting there and doing that.
Oh, yeah.
It can be like when you're running, it can be, or when you're gardening, or when you find a zone, when you put the iron in. Do you know what I mean? Where can you find a zone and stuff?
Sorry. So you think you can meditate when your brain is having to be active or in auto?
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're getting yourself into a zone.
You can.
You kind of like focus into a zone. That's a form of meditation because you're taking yourself away from your.
So you have got people like, who's really interesting, and I think he's always worth a little read into his stuff, is Joe Dispenza. Joe Dispenza has essentially shown within a lot of the research that he's been looking at, our brain can't differentiate between physical reality and thought alone. So our brain neuronal patterns will start to pick up things based on just thought alone. So we can actually, like I say, with rugby players, Johnny Wilkinson, he used to actually practice dropping the kick from the corner to the post, and he used to have to do it 100 times. After he'd done it 100 times, he'd then visualise himself doing it another 100 times. And he used to do that all the time, and he actually was one of the top kickers in the world. But he practiced as much visually as he did physically.
I used to do things like that when I was a child.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't do
it anymore. And funny enough, like there's probably a lot of people in the room, right? And I do this as well, and we talk about this as part of running a business. Like things that we did in the past as part of our group here, we kind of went, oh, what did we do in the past that worked really well? And we go, oh, we used to do this for clients, and
Well,
actually we
so
stopped
it's
doing that. And actually, why did we stop doing that? And you know, we all do it, right? We used to maybe get up in the morning and do a juice that was really healthy, and then we stopped doing it, and then maybe we did exercise daily, and then we go, well, hang on, we got busy and I stopped doing it.
It's easy to get off track, isn't it?
Yeah, something breaks the cycle.
Absolutely. So my job is to kick you guys back into gear again. Okay. And then obviously we can start to affect ourselves chemically. This is a hard one nowadays. So actually, there's probably a couple of things that I have definitely noticed with stuff like nutrition and supplements. Nowadays, obviously, food. Do you reckon it's better quality or lower quality than it used to be?
There you go, but
And not even just the quality of the foods that we've got coming in. How much is there in the way of processed foods nowadays?
Too much.
Too much.
Right. Yeah, right. And how many chemicals is it? And by the way, like we talk about this as our gut has a direct impact on our brain. We know that they talk about the gut now being the second brain. So what we're putting in here, does anybody know where 98% of serotonin in the body is actually produced? It's in the gut, right? So if your gut feels like, guess what? You feel like too. Censored. You know, that was the PG-13 version. Okay. But the reality is what we're putting in our bodies is having a direct correlation impact on how we actually fucking feel. Again, this is not me making these statements. This is what research is starting to show us. Okay, what we're starting to find is that does medicine work? Yes, but at a cost. So there was a really interesting podcast I was listening to with a medical doctor, and the way that he described it, if you imagine your body is propped up by 10 pillars, and we had a pillar for heart health, we had a pillar for nervous system health, we had a pillar for bone health, we had a pillar for each part of our body. When we're not looking after our health, one of those pillars starts to get chipped away at. And it might become too weak. And if we don't prop that pillar up, what's going to happen is the structure is going to collapse. So what we do is we should be giving, and this is how it should be done, and this is what the doctor said, we should be giving someone a short-term pill to strengthen that pillar. Short-term. But the problem is that what we don't do is we don't give that person that thing short-term. So what starts to happen is it comes at the expense of the other pillars. So and you can look into if you go in any medicine, there will be a list of side effects on it. In every pamphlet that you ever read, there's a list of side effects, and they might be small and they might be big.
So like prevention, and sometimes it is genetic, where it's
Yeah, there's an interesting one about genetics as well. So again, if you want to go down the route of genetics, one of the people that I really like listening to is a gentleman called Bruce Lipton. Okay, so with genetics, what we're starting to find, two identical twins. One of them gets cancer, one of them doesn't. Genetically identical. Genetically identical. They have to both have it. If it's a solely gene process, they both have to have it. So so epi meaning ever changing. Our genes change. What we know about genes is they turn on and turn off. Right? Okay. I'm not a tanner. This lady at the front, very beautiful tan. But the reason why, we probably both stand, because you've been out in the sun this summer, I've been out in the sun this, and we can see there's a very clear definition difference between the two of us, right? But neither of us would have known who the tanner was if we both didn't go and stand in the sun. That's a gene expression. It's the same again with cancer, diabetes. If you've got a gene for cancer, or a gene for diabetes, or a gene for heart disease, and we expose ourselves to the stresses we've been talking about, the person that's got the cancer gene, guess what they develop? The person's got the heart disease, guess what they develop? And so it's when the genes then express themselves.
There's an amazing woman called Barbara O'Neill, and she says, genetics loads the gun and lifestyle pulls the trigger.
Yeah, that's such a good saying.
Yeah.
Because it's essentially what Bruce Lipton's talking about. So you asked me about a case study. Because the reality is that we know that at some point, some people have exceeded the limits of what their body can do, and people have started exhausting options of what they know what to do with themselves. And like I say, it's very good for me to come up here and say, exercise better, eat better nutrition, make sure you get your magnesium supplements, make sure you get your omega-3, blah, 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 balance this out, do this, work on your mental well-being, blah, 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 blah. But it can be really difficult when you're stuck in a cycle. And this is exactly what happened with Claire. So Claire last year was sat where you guys are now. Right, and Claire's actually come back in, and she's actually come into, and you've just started with me, haven't you, Maxine?
Right, 6 sessions.
Maxine's been in with me for 6 sessions, and again, already starting to see some cool changes.
Oh yeah.
Even her son, who's the most sceptical person about chiropractic care, has even said, "Man, you can walk." Right?
He's 6'5" and I was keeping up with him. When I staggered through
So
the
do you
door.
mean not just walking, you're running?
I can't run.
No, but keeping up with it.
Yeah. Oh,
So Claire came to me off the back end of one of these fibromyalgia talks. Now, Claire was subject to domestic and physical violence, and Claire had been through countless sessions with physical therapists. She'd been through countless sessions with counsellors. She'd been through countless sessions with multitudes of different professionals on the NHS. And she was getting high blood pressure. She was type 2 diabetic. She was chronic anxiety and panic attacks. If she went for a 15-minute walk with her dog, had to take a nap in the afternoon just to cope with the load of taking the dog for a walk. She had digestive issues, she had energy issues, she couldn't sleep, and she just had got to the point where she didn't really know what else to do. So that's not familiar going on in the room. And I remember sitting down with Claire the first time, and I like to set targets with people, like what do people want to do, and like what do they want to achieve, and we set that because we want to have targets for people. We did it with you when you first came in, and Claire's target, bearing in mind, right, she can't walk for 15 minutes with her dog. Do you know what her target was? She wanted to go flyboarding. Does anyone know what flyboarding is?
Yeah.
So you get a fucking skateboard that's on a jet-propelled water pistol that goes underneath your feet and projects you 20 foot into the air. That was bearing in mind, right, high blood pressure, high blood sugars, anxiety, panic attacks. I want to go flyboarding. I was like, okay, can we set some more realistic targets? But interesting enough, when we did Claire's 4th adjustment, and I remember it because I'm a bloke and we're not very good at this. Claire had a really emotional release on that session, and Claire, despite the fact going to counsellors for the best part of 6 months, all the counselling basically did for her was make her feel worse. Because when the counsellor kept asking, and she kept getting frustrated because when the counsellor asked her how she felt about her previous trauma, she said, "Well, I don't really feel anything about it." Now, interesting enough, when you don't feel anything, that's pretty much the lowest level of emotion you can basically get to. Because feeling nothing, even feeling angry, is more than nothing.
yeah.
So I actually remember doing the adjustment, because when I did the adjustment with Claire, she pinned her arms to the table next to her and looked at the ceiling and just kind of just shook there and was shaking on the table. And she just wouldn't make eye contact with me. It was like, what the fuck have you just done to me? And we didn't do a lot more that session. I did about 2 adjustments on it, literally 2. I just was like, yeah, this is too much for you to deal with. We're going to stick with just that. I just let her sit there. I actually gave her a hug on the way out and just said, really good job. Really appreciate the fact that you could talk to me like that today. And she came in next session. She kind of sheepishly came through the door and she goes, I've got a really interesting question for you. And I was like, okay, far away. And she's like, well, I want to know if chiropractic care has an impact on blood pressure. And I said, why is it bad? And she said, no, I've had high blood pressure for 14 years. And for the first time in 14 years, my blood pressure's gone. Now, interestingly enough, on the same session, she was being daily monitored because her blood pressure kept going up. She was sitting on the 160 over 100, so fucking high. I'm going to have a heart attack high, and her blood pressure still hasn't gone back up again a year later. Her blood sugar is still normal. She is now walking with her dog daily. She's not having to have naps in the afternoon. Her digestive system is starting to improve, and this blew my mind. She hasn't been able to hold down relationships because she has lacked trust, and for the first time in 13 years she's now dating someone again. I hope she doesn't mind me telling you this, because I am so fucking proud of that woman that it is just unbelievable to see someone change so much. And sorry, I'm going to answer your question, but I've got to share this last bit because again, I love how ballsy she is, because she came to me the other day and goes, we were doing a progress review of like how she was getting on, and she said, I'd really like to start doing more exercise again. I said, okay, so what are you going to do? She goes, I'm going to do martial arts classes. I was like, for fuck's sake. So like for me, seeing those kinds of changes, now those results are not 100% typical, but it just shows what possibilities there are for people when we actually assess someone like a person, treat someone like a person, and actually connect to the way that their body is basically functioning and working. Gone far away.
My understanding of what you just said resonates with the experience that I had a few years ago. But I won't tell you the whole story, but I'll try and nutshell it as much as possible. It released a load of emotional energy that was stuck somewhere in the body. This is my understanding of what's happened. Something similar happened to me with a friend of mine who used to be a healer. She used to massage and things. And I've got a lot of stuck emotional energy in parts of my body from different things. And I went to her for a beginning session, we had a talk, that's what I said, with little bits of pain were in my back, and I've gone for something completely different to what I'd gone for. I get sporadic sciatica, but I wasn't going to have sciatica this time. I had a big knot in the shoulder and I wanted to go and get it sorted out. And she started doing these little tiny little, wouldn't have even hurt, little micro things on my back. And all of a sudden I had a ball of, I'm going to cry when I say this, and a ball of fire that sort of went up and inside and up my spine and exploded. And I sobbed so much. And it released this, I couldn't understand what it was at the time, but what you were saying was really, and for the next week afterwards, it was almost like a sort of release. I had a sort of fluey type thing. It was almost like everything was coming out of me. And after that, I felt a lot lighter I've had a lot of trauma, but from that's something that was released, so that really resonated.
And it's not always, and we're both talking about an emotional trauma, but the body will release different types of trauma, right? So there's more than one type of trauma in the body, because we've already established that. But sometimes when you do something physical to someone, it won't be the first time, it won't be the last time I have that, because I have people cry on me all the time. It happens. In fact, I actually had it today, so we had someone cry. But
we can't do it that's what I was a bit like, so when other people see me, like specialists and things, they love me well, because I did outrageous things.
And the thing is, life's for living, right? You've got to use it or lose it, right?
Yeah, and I was booked in to do the boxing.
Crazy.
So
I've done that one. There you go. We'll do some coaching at the same time. So obviously, I've actually got someone in the room that's essentially been through the new patient experience, because they're sitting front and centre. So when we do an exam, what we essentially want to try and make sure that we do is that we treat you guys like people, not like numbers, not like conditions. So rather than labelling, I don't like labelling. I think fibromyalgia is, as I've already said, unknown muscle pain. It's a bit of a fancy diagnosis in my experience. But what we essentially do is we want to really understand the way that someone's body is functioning. We've done this with you, haven't we, Maxine?
Yes.
So we have a look at obviously the way that someone is physically, how someone is feeling. We go through your symptoms. We discuss them. We have you try and explain, what your kind of targets and stuff are. But we also did posture photos with you. We also did a load of muscle testing with you, which kind of blew your brain a little bit when I first started doing it with Maxine, because we get you to basically try and hold a muscle, and the muscle might resist or it might not resist. And then what we look for is whatever's going on in your system. That was interesting because I had a student sitting in the room the day that you first came in, didn't I? And Maxine was sitting on the table, and I was going, there's some stuff going on with, it's like digestive system.
No, it was everything, wasn't it? It was.
I've got digestive issues, and it's like, and then you've got these issues, and that might be linked with breathing issues. We've got this, and it was weird because I was reading off symptoms that the tests were basically saying, oh, you could be maybe struggling a little bit with some of these things, or maybe struggling with a little these things, and you were just kind of looking at me like, does this guy know this? And it's really interesting. I did this with one of the PTs that works in my gym, and she asked me something about her shoulder, and interesting enough, when we were checking her, she had a lot of congestion in her abdomen. She didn't tell me this, but I was like, are you struggling with digestive issues? And she was like, well, what's that got to do with my shoulder? I said, I don't know, but something to do with interference or blocking of movement in your bowel is interfering with the muscle movement in your shoulder. Don't know why, but your brain's got 1,000 trillion connections. We don't know why it makes those connections to each other. But just use muscle testing. So we do it with you, didn't we?
Yeah,
so we look at a muscle, and then we look at how the muscle is engaging. If the muscle is not engaging, then we look at what system or organ in the body is creating the dysfunction.
Oh, he'd spotted, without me saying, he'd spotted that I'd had my gallbladder removed. He might not have called it the gallbladder, but he says, have you had problems with your glands? And I said, well, I've had a gallbladder removed, I've had a parathyroid gland removed. Then what was the next one? Oh, yeah, there were several things. It was ridiculous because the form wasn't long enough to put everything in. You know, you start to feel like a hypochondriac. So I gave a very brief. Oh yeah, we just went through. It was like he'd read my medical file.
Ironically, the interesting thing is.
Oh, and he didn't ask me to come today.
Yeah. Interesting enough, the student I had in the room with Maxine, I later put him on the table as well, and we tested through his dysfunctions. And interestingly enough, he hadn't told me anything about his history. I hadn't read any of his notes because I didn't have any notes for him. So she put him on the table, and we found a knee issue. And he's like, "How the hell do you know I've got knee issues?" And it's just weird. And it's not always that the test is, because where you guys think your symptoms are and where your body thinks your symptoms are going to sometimes be two different things. But as a general rule of thumb, we will start to see these kinds of changes, and the body will try and communicate these. And like I say, the easiest way for me to do it is through testing. Is actually test someone's body and see what's going on. So like I say, when I go through a new patient consultation, that is the hottest room that I see. I'm surprised that you haven't moved as well. If you want to so look, when I go through an initial consultation with someone, I typically do it on 2 days. Is it alright if I just explain exactly what we do? Okay. So day number 1, right? And I've actually put a voucher for this in your bags, right? So I do something really cool for you guys because I think it's really fair. Like, one of the secrets to success is showing up, and you guys have showed up today. You participated with me really well. You've answered all my questions. I've given you a load of information. Has everybody learned something? Right, something. You know, and it might not necessarily be 100% like you can go, but you understand that how we live affects the way that we function.
How did fibromyalgia come about?
Do you know what?
It wasn't here, the next minute.
I think it always was.
Everywhere.
It's like a mountain has been discovered.
No,
No,
it wasn't made public like we ever
So
it wasn't local.
yeah. So the interesting thing with most medical conditions, right, is they were always put there for doctors to talk about you without you knowing what they were talking about. So how many people in the room actually knew the definition of fibromyalgia?
No.
Right, it's the same as arthritis. Arth means joint, itis means inflammation. Oh no shit, my joint's hurt. Probably really good. So they're basically giving you a label. You walk in and go, my knee hurts. And they go, oh yeah, arthritis. Well yeah, no shit doc, it hurts. So tell me something I don't know. Right? And the thing is what our medical profession are really good, and again, I don't blame them for this because this is what they're taught, is they're very good at giving things labels, but they're not necessarily coming up with solutions. Now the problem with modern society, is it fair to say that modern society is probably more stressful than it's ever been? So why do you think we're starting to see a massive slip in people's health?
Because they're stressed.
Because we're stressed out our rivals, right? Then my job is just to really make you guys aware of that, because the earlier that I can make people aware of the fact that, you know, if we're eating too much, not exercising enough, not looking after our mental well-being, just throwing chemicals into our body and just taking a shitload of medication to try and knock off the side effects of bad living, essentially all I'm letting people do is basically bury themselves to an early grave, which is the polar opposite of what she would have wanted me to do. So the fact that I'm sitting here in front of people going, hey, look, let's just live a healthier lifestyle, for the fact that, you know, I know what happens if we don't. So I don't think that it's more in the public, well, things are all more in the public right now because what we got, social media. What could I do? I could stick an advert in front of all of you lovely people and market to something that people want help with and go, hey guys, I want to help you guys. But not because I think it's the condition that we label it as, but because I want to help people.
Like on the flip side of that as well, when you say that the doctors, when they see like, I don't know, my feeling about patients with fibromyalgia, is it a bit like, oh okay, that's a bit of a laughable bit of a, do you know what? Yeah, just like, is it just
Yeah, it becomes a bit of a difficult one as well, because I've got a lot of clients that obviously, diagnosed fibromyalgia, they go see a doctor, and unfortunately it becomes one of those things that then any new symptom you get, just gets thrown out.
There are things that are sort of within fibromyalgia that it's not just fibromyalgia, it's like, I can't remember the name of it, I've got foggy brain and all that, but like skin conditions and nervous system, things on my skin, things that shouldn't feel painful on my skin, like the wind, I get wind on my skin, but that's a fibro thing, but it's not, it's called something else.
They're all, do you understand, right? So all conditions are just labelled.
Yeah.
It's just a way of us categorising people into a list of symptoms, right?
Yeah.
But the reality is that in order to change symptoms, we have to do something to get it.
You've got to understand the label.
So for instance, a heart attack on stroke, they'd be like, oh okay, yeah, she's
Yeah, you need to do X, Y, and Z.
But we're saying that, oh yeah, it's just fibromyalgia.
But it's about understanding that label and understanding what is
What's the
involved
part
with
and
what
what's
that
the
is.
part.
And
So look, I love working with people, as you can probably tell. I get kicks off of doing stuff like this, so it's just quite good fun for me. So, like I say, I've put a voucher in everyone's bag because what I want to do is I want to make this accessible. I want to make chiropractic care accessible to the public, and I want to do something special for you guys. Is that all right? Cool. So we put a voucher in for a half price exam and X-rays in everyone's little bag. So typically, when we go for an exam process with someone, we go through the history. We go through a physical exam, so we check all the muscle tests and have a look and see how your body is actually responding. We have a look at all your movements, but we also get some digital posture checks done on that day as well. What we also do is we do on-site X-ray, so we can actually have a look, because when people's system isn't regulating properly, their tissue don't repair properly, and actually when we X-ray someone's spine, we can actually start to see whether it is starting to have a big physical impact on the way that someone's body is starting to work. What we normally do, once we've collated all that information, we want to deliver it back to you, okay? So once we've done the physical exam, the history, the X-rays, digital posture checks, what we want to do is we want to bring you back and go through a step-by-step process of how we would actually then manage that. Because I don't want to overload someone on the first day. Is that fair? I also have to then analyse all that information and make it make sense back to you.
Will it be with you?
It will be with me.
Because it says chiropractor.
Oh yeah, so it's because we have 3 different chiropractors in the office. So we know anyone that's obviously coming from this that they're probably, they know me now. Maybe might have got to know me a little bit in the last hour. And so what I normally do is I bring everyone back and I go through a detailed explanation of obviously how I would manage and then treat your particular case. Now obviously exam fee is normally 65, X-ray fees up to 85, digital posture checks are normally £30, report of findings another £50, you see it goes up and up and up. Like I say, I'll put a voucher in, half price is it. So it's 110. Yeah. So rather than being 220, it's 110. But we half price it again because you guys are really cool. You guys are really cool. So if like we knock it down to 55. So the only deal with paying at 55 is we take a look and stay. That's the deal, right? So we do it at £55. You get your exam, your X-rays, you get your report of findings with me. Maxine's just done this. She came to one of my free open days. I gave her exactly the same offer, and she went, okay. And now she's just starting to live the benefits of taking the gamble. Apparently on a worthwhile gamble. Thank Christ. We're in worse.
I was desperate. I really got to the stage where I couldn't take another pill.
But this is what I think I'm here, because like, I do all these things and I'm just sick of like, just carrying on and...
So how do you treat someone?
How do I treat someone?
Yeah.
That's a really good question.
Nicely, hopefully.
He's lovely.
Okay. How do I treat you? Yeah, I am. Maxine, how many of our sessions have looked the same?
None of them.
None.
No, even you said the other session, you never do the same thing twice.
Not done the same
because
thing.
it's-
So I've seen her 6 times.
Yes.
So you understand that within 6 sessions, I've done 6 sessions with her and I've barely done the same thing. To tell you how I'm going to treat you right now, fucking impossible. Because it depends on what you find, right? So if I find that there's a restriction in someone's colon, guess where I'm going to be working? I'm going to be working on the colon. If I find there's a restriction in someone's cranial fascia, guess where I'm going to be working? If I find there's a restriction in the joint in the top of the neck, guess what I'm going to be doing?
Okay.
So I've worked with people with spectrums of different things, and no 2 people are the same. Because your nervous system is different to his nervous system, which is different to hers nervous system at the back. Why? Because you've gone through different traumas to what his traumas have been to her things at the back. Physically, chemically, or emotionally. So for me to be able to go, I'm going to do this. I'll tell you what I am going to do. I'm going to do chiropractic care, whatever that means for you.
Yeah.
So we clear the nervous system of what that means. So again, I had Deanna who came in, and her big thing, she had fibromyalgia, but the big thing that she really getting hacked off with was the fact that she couldn't walk. Now, one of the things with the bowel is the bowel shares its nerve supply with the legs. So if the bowel's not functioning, sometimes it'll make your legs hurt. Guess what we found with her? We did a bowel release, and all of a sudden, guess what happened to her knees? She was walking better. But it's because rather than treat your symptom or where you think it hurts, we address your nervous system, which controls every function in the body. So rather than treating symptoms, I'm going to be looking for causes of dysfunction.
I've not heard you mention, of all the things you mentioned, I've not heard you mention anything about scar tissue.
Yep, do that too.
Brilliant. So,
Right, so the interesting thing, right, is I've got, by the way, because you realise you could ask me how many different things I treat in an afternoon, we'll be here for fucking hours. Right? So, by the way, I've gone down to the weirdest things that, like, for some people I can't get them to stabilise a muscle, and I've had it with a guy before. The only way I could get him to stabilise a muscle was chewing down on a piece of tissue on his jaw, because he had a metal plate on one of his teeth. I've even gone down to one guy that I couldn't get any of his muscles to stabilise whilst his eyes were open. The only way I could get his muscles to stabilise is when his eyes were closed. So looking at a muscle function, no muscle stability, it just goes doof, dead. Couldn't get anything to stabilise him. We checked all of his joints, checked all of his fascia, checked all of his organs, nothing was coming up. Closed his eyes, guess what? Muscle engages. So he had an internalised issue.
I don't know the terminology. Yeah. I know what you mean.
But I've had other people where the only way I can get them to stabilise is by stimulating different muscles around the palate. So again, I don't know what I'm going to find on you guys, because we can put our hands up and go, what's my symptom going to be? I don't know.
Have you ever thought of what you see something and like just look at someone going,
You're a lost cause.
huh?
Huh?
Just close looking at one.
No, because you can always
I am too.
one of the things that I'm very fully aware of is you're not necessarily always going to get people perfect, but you can always improve someone's nervous system.
What I was going to say is that the reason I asked that is because a lot of the traumas I find, or a lot of the pain that I find that I have is around the traumas and the scar tissue and the previous injuries, should we say, that I've had in my life. And I find that when I have a flare up, it tends to be really intense in those places, and also sciatic nerve and my scar tissue got in with my hamstring when it was healing, because I had a bit of hamstring.
So there might be other reasons why that tissue is healing.
Yeah,
So I can't tell you specifically.
No. That's why I asked about scar tissue.
So what I'm going to do is, because I'm aware it's really freaking hot in here, I'm going to say a massive thank you for this guy literally melts to death. If you guys want to take advantage of the special offer today, go and speak to Andrea or Pri at the back. They're gonna deal with bookings and stuff. I'm gonna hang around and ask for some